ahead and get started. And we're going to talk first with Vince Wong, so the new CEO of BioCrossroads. So Vince, if you'd like to come up here, we're going to start with a little fireside chat, me and you, I believe.
Great. All right. I feel like I'm at church. Everyone's sitting in the back and worried about the offertory being passed around. Come on up if you want to get a closer look.
Well, it's been at least a decade since Indiana has developed a statewide strategy for its life sciences industry. I've been lucky. I've been covering Indiana's life sciences industry for about 16 years. So I've seen a lot of change over the years too, and I've seen some startups come full circle and exit, and it's been a really exciting time. So there's a lot of big opportunities and challenges on the horizon right now. So it's a good time for BioCrossroads to bring many of the stakeholders together to really look at the landscape and create a roadmap looking forward. And that brings us to today. The roadmap has 4 key pillars. So we're going to talk about each one of us and the role that we play, the places we represent, how we can contribute to that collective vision. And of course, we're going to talk about you, the new BioCrossroads CEO. So we want to dive a bit deeper into how we can bring this strategy to life. I want you to lead that conversation, but first we want to learn a little bit about you. So tell us just a bit about your background, what brought you to BioCrossroads, and why was it the right time to come to BioCrossroads?
Sure. Thanks, Kylie. First of all, thank you to all of you for coming in on a beautiful day. I know it's hard to drag yourselves in from a great day to have a beer or wine on the patio at home or at your favorite watering hole. So thank you for spending some time with us to talk about life sciences. So super thrilled to be leading BioCrossroads. I'm 1 month in, so I still have the new guy card I can play. But I am born and raised in Indianapolis, born on the south side, raised there. My dad was at Lilly for 32 years, so I kind of grew up as hearing about his work stories around the ping pong. You know, he had his posters in the basement on our ping pong table about serotonin uptake inhibitors, and I was like, what is that? But that's kind of the dinner table conversation I grew up with, and did all my education here in Indiana, and went to law school, practiced law for 3 years, figured I didn't want to do billable hours for the rest of my life, and went into the house with one of my clients, and then at Telamon Corporation up in Carmel. Roche was one of my first customers, and then they later recruited me. I spent 17 years, wonderful years at Roche Diagnostics, mostly at 96 and 69, but about 6 years out in hanging out with scorpions and snakes in Tucson. We acquired a company called Ventana Medical, which is an anatomic pathology company, the world leader in immunohistochemistry. And after the acquisition, I went out as part of the integration team and ended up spending about 6 years there. Came back, worked, many of you may know who Jack Phillips is, worked with Jack's leadership team. And then last 3 years I've been working, helping build a startup in St. Louis, actually, called Geneoscopy, developing RNA sequencing technology to transform gastrointestinal health. And then I got a call from BioCrossroads in September, and it was a bit of a surprise to get the call, and a pleasant one. And I just reflected, like, wow, what a great opportunity for me to leverage my one passion for Indiana, and 2, my experience in both big companies, but also helping build a startup the last 3 years, and how can I leverage that experience to enable and support the growth of Indiana life sciences. And I saw firsthand the enabling role that a BioCrossroads organization can be for a startup. While I was at Geneoscopy, just BioSTL is an analogous organization of BioCrossroads in St. Louis, and we received our initial funding from a seed fund that BioSTL has started with Arch Grants, and we just got our start in Cortex, which is kind of like IVRI. Our IP diligence in our Series B was done by BioSTL and BioGenerator. And so I just saw how many ways the BioCrossroads-like organization can help nurture and support and catalyze the growth for startups. And so I hope that BioCrossroads going forward can also support the vibrant life science startup ecosystem. And we'll be talking more about that later on today.
So that's a perfect segue into this new roadmap. Really looked at the current position of Indiana's life sciences industry and where it's going. So this was released in January. It's a 10-year strategy. It was a collaboration with Techonomy partners. What did the report reveal? What really stood out to you?
So many folks in this room were stakeholders who had input into that strategy. So this is not a BioCrossroads strategy. This is a statewide strategy, and we appreciate all your contributions. There are 4 pillars. One is how do we continue to foster and nurture our R&D ecosystem. Indiana is the number 19 cluster for IP patent activity in biotech in the world. Kind of blew me away when Nature published that in January. Purdue is the number 4 university in the country around patent activity. And so I don't think we lack invention or discovery activity here in Indiana. I think what the opportunity is, how do we translate those discoveries and bring it from lab to patient in a more robust way? And so that's a key focus for us as a state, and certainly for BioCrossroads. The second pillar is manufacturing. So the study found that there's great opportunity, and the pandemic revealed the frailty and vulnerability of our supply chain, and it impacts patients and the industry as well. And so there's a big focus on how do we reshore manufacturing capabilities, and how does Indiana, with this rich legacy of manufacturing, capitalize on this reshoring of manufacturing capability and really meet the moment that's in front of us. And so that's a big focus for all of us as stakeholders going forward. The third pillar is to fuel the growth of innovation, fuel the growth of manufacturing, workforce development. We have estimated about 2,200 to 3,700 manufacturing jobs that are required to support the growth that we anticipate. But, we are blessed with a low unemployment rate here in Indiana. And we're blessed with great academic institutions, but we have a challenge of keeping that talent here. So how do we, both starting from K through 12 all the way to upper secondary education, and Molly and Jane were talking more about efforts that are underway around really our workforce talent development to support the growth opportunity we have within life sciences. And the last piece is how do we foster continued collaboration across all the stakeholders and begin to tell our story in a more effective and powerful way. I think we tend to be Hoosier humble about the assets we do have, and I think there's an opportunity for us to tell the world more about all the amazing assets, the 3 R1 universities here, the record-breaking year that IU School of Medicine had with regard to NIH funding last year, to the amazing talent that resides in this room and elsewhere, that this is a place that you can thrive from a biotech perspective, whether that be research and discovery, to manufacturing, to commercialization, and the entire supply chain can be housed here in Indiana in a very effective, robust way. So that's the opportunity we have as partners to really move all these pillars forward, and that's a high-level summary, maybe not so high-level, of the report.
Well, it's good to have a Hoosier leading BioCrossroads. When you left to start in St. Louis, you still lived in Indiana, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you were home, and you're still home. So that's a great introduction to today and what we're going to talk about. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into each one of those pillars. So let's go ahead and bring up our first panel to do a bit deeper dive into that first pillar.
Here we warm up the seats. So you ready? These are the first 2.
This is panel 1, yes. Yes, so 3 people. So the journal Nature, as Vince mentioned, published in January that Indiana is ranked 19th globally for biotech patenting. But this patent activity doesn't match the level of startups this ranking would suggest. So in this first panel, we're going to talk about where Indiana needs to channel its efforts to foster a thriving R&D landscape, the exciting opportunities the strategy holds, and how public-private partnerships can accelerate success. These will help Indiana not only remain a hub for life sciences innovation, but also become a fertile and vibrant startup ecosystem. So joining us here, we have Sharon Simonis. She is Vice President of Business Development at Indiana Biosciences Research Institute. Kristen Sherman, Chief Executive Officer of Covina Therapeutics, and of course, Vince Wong, President and CEO of BioCrossroads. So Sharon, we're going to start with you. You're working every day to support Indiana's life sciences startup at IBRI. How has IBRI evolved to increase its role in fostering the life sciences startup ecosystem here in Indiana?
Well, I think that's really easy to answer. So you're in our building, and within this building, we have over 200 years of industry experience at a research institute, which in itself is very rare. And with that, we've taken that expertise to build key capabilities that you can't find in a traditional academic or research setting to be able to do that translational research and move things forward. So not only do we have the capabilities, we also have the space. So we have chemistry space, which is down here on this first floor, and then we have space that my friend here to the right is in from the biology perspective. So having that incubator space that allows people to not only have their lab space, but interact with people who are drug hunters, who have had that experience, and give them, the tools, resources, and encouragement that they need and collaborate with us. So, we can help them create novel modalities, which is kind of a gap sometimes when you're getting things out of the academic institutions, and create that intellectual property that will convert to something that somebody wants to invest in and, eventually manufacture and kind of keep that circle of life.
Okay, very good. We covered this building even when it was just an idea, so it's a joy to be here. I've been here a lot, and it's just a happening place and good food across the street. Such a joy to see it come from beginning to end. Okay, Kristen, you are CEO of Covina Therapeutics. Give us the quick elevator pitch of what you're developing.
Well, we are focused on developing therapeutics to treat human papillomavirus infections and cancers. Yes, there is a vaccine. Yes, it is highly effective, but it has no impact on the millions who are infected and will become infected with HPV. So we still need a therapeutic. That's the motion.
All right, very good. So, I love you gave that pitch during an interview, and I loved it. I think it's fantastic. It is, but I think
And she's raising count.
because when you said it, the first question that came to my mind was, well, there's a vaccine for that, but you answered it before I could even voice it. So, as the leader of a startup, talk just a little bit about how you view the importance of expanding life sciences, the footprint of it here in Indiana.
Yeah, to me, it's really the ripple effect, right? The bigger we are, the more startups that exist, the more talent there is to circulate, and the more capital. So you get a bigger footprint, you're likely to have more successful exits. Those folks tend to go on and do the next startup and the next startup. I'm an example of that. But even if you don't have successful exits, say your science doesn't work or you couldn't get funding in today's environment, you still build skills and fill your toolbox with experiences that allow you to go on and do the next startup and the next startup. So it's important that the bigger the footprint, the more talent we have here in town to catch these startups as IP comes out of university. And then relative to capital, again, if you have a successful exit, the money tends to go back into local startups through angel investments. We've seen that time and time again. But more importantly, the bigger our footprint, the more we are able to attract outside capital. It's worth their time to come here and to meet the management teams and to review the science. It just is this self-fulfilling prophecy. You need to be bigger to get bigger. So we just need to get bigger.
I like it. Did I hear an amen? We're back to the church.
That must be somebody trying to raise money.
Energetic audience is always good. Okay, Vince, talk just a little bit about the key areas of research and innovation strength that we have here in Indiana.
You know, I think we've got lots of areas of strength that are identified in the report. You know, we are at the epicenter of the metabolic transformation that's happening, and whether it be, you know, Lilly, obviously with Mounjaro and Zepbound, but now with Novo's pending acquisition of Catalent down in Bloomington, to really promising startups just upstairs with Karen's company, Adipo. And you know, it's just an example of many of the assets we have and just the legacy intellectual capital that we have here in Indianapolis, central Indiana, around cardiometabolic disorders. So that would be one that jumps to mind. The second is a really burgeoning radiopharma cluster. So Jane and Mike have helped start a working group of the 20+ radiopharma companies that are clustered here in central Indiana. We have certain geographic and talent advantages for radiopharma, and so that's really an area of strength. The other is, I referenced this earlier, manufacturing. So we have some CDMOs here in the audience, and you know, the $16 billion acquisition that Novo has just announced for Catalent validates the business and value proposition that CDMOs have. There's a huge constraint on manufacturing capacity, and that's only getting more and more exacerbated. There's a need to onshore manufacturing here to the state, and we do that well. And then maybe last is neurodegenerative. We had a great summit last year around Alzheimer's research and Indiana's contribution to that. You know, we've had a great legacy of CNS excellence here in Indiana and Alzheimer's, whether it be diagnostics at Roche or research being done at Lilly or at Gates upstairs at IBRI. There's a number of examples of really promising and key assets for neurodegenerative disease.
Okay, well, thank you to each one of you for kind of setting the stage for us today and giving us the lay of the land. We're going to move on to our next panel, the next pillar in the plan. This is enhancing the manufacturing ecosystem. The pandemic revealed this critical nature and vulnerability of the nation's healthcare supply chain and the need to reshore manufacturing, which we've already touched on. The statewide industry sector strategy calls for Indiana to seize this opportunity and capitalize on its strength in manufacturing. So on the stage to dive a bit deeper into this topic is Mike Bollender. He's Senior Vice President of External Engagement. He's Senior Vice President, External Engagement and Chief Innovation Officer of BioCrossroads, and Ann Lathrop, Chief Strategy Officer for the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Mike, let's start with you. In your role at BioCrossroads, you focus on getting companies to come to or expand in Indiana. Where do we need to focus our efforts to be most successful?
Yeah, great question. So I think that, you know, Vince did a great job of kind of laying out the quantitative numbers around the ecosystem. One of the cool things about our life sciences ecosystem here in Indiana is it's not narrow, it's very, very broad. Whether you're talking about having the largest pharmaceutical company by market cap, Lilly down the street, you got Roche Diagnostics. We are home to the orthopedics capital of the world up in Warsaw. There's been, you know, just radical changes in the treatment of heart disease, you know, through Cook and, you know, the non-invasive platforms that they've built over the years. We are home to one of the largest and fastest growing radiopharmaceutical hubs, as we mentioned. So it's a very broad ecosystem, and while we are not Boston or San Francisco, we don't have to be Boston or San Francisco to be successful. As some of the numbers showed, we were #1 state in pharmaceutical exports last year. We were #2 in life sciences of all the states in the U.S. overall. You go outside of Indiana, heck, you go around Indiana and say that, much less outside of Indiana, people are generally surprised about that, right? And so it is, how do we leverage the strengths? So Vince just talked about some of the therapeutic areas that we have where we have strengths, whether that be metabolic disease and what you mentioned, whether it be neurodegeneration and the work that's being done in Alzheimer's, whether it be, you know, continuing to grow our radiopharma sector, And candidly, we have an advantage when it comes to making things. It's what we do really well, right? Vince just talked about the contract manufacturers that we have here. We have some in the room represented, but we've seen tremendous growth because that is such a key component of the life sciences ecosystem, and we do that really well. So I think as we continue to focus on those areas of strength, we can continue to grow bigger and get bigger by being bigger, right?
I think we have a new tagline. Okay, and you have a broad view of Indiana industries and what makes our economy tick. So put into context the importance and impact of life sciences to our state.
It's hugely important, right? It's $85 billion to our economy, and so it's one of the critical areas that we are focused on at the IEDC. A lot of what we've talked about over the last couple of years is we're going to get the economy we want, not the economy that was just coming to us. So we have really good target lists. Mike is a great partner with us in going and doing that. As you saw, you employ thousands of people. That's critically important, and your wages are usually well above state and U.S. average wage, which is something that's also really important. Our main goal is to grow the GDP of the state of Indiana and to put more money in Hoosier pockets. So life science is critical to that. A few other numbers is over the last 3 years, we've had almost $6 billion worth of investment announced from life sciences companies. That's in comparison to about $60 billion in total over the last 3 years, so 10% of the announcements. That includes 10,700 jobs. That's a lot of really good wage jobs, and it's so aligned with our philosophy on what we want for the economy, but also what our universities are supporting. So very, very impactful.
So this plan in particular outlines some goals designed to position the state as both the national leader in pharmaceutical manufacturing, number one, and to be a top 5 leader in medical device manufacturing. So looking at the plan, Mike, in this manufacturing ecosystem, where are you focusing your efforts to make sure the state remains competitive on a global scale in terms of innovation, efficiency, et cetera?
Yeah, so I'd highlight 2 things that come immediately to mind. One, most of you probably are aware that the EDA designated Central Indiana as a technology hub, in particular for the Heartland BioWorks, so this biotechnology. And the 2 components of this, one has to do with making sure that we have a workforce to be able to address the manufacturing needs, and I know my colleague James can talk more about that. The second was, how do we shore up the manufacturing ecosystem that we have here? So what they were looking for in these tech hubs was, where do you have an environment that is on the cusp of being a world leader? And so by being designated, we're recognized as we're right there, right? We have the components. How do we continue to build on that? So some of the things, some of the work that we'll be doing around innovation, using our contract manufacturers to be able to help new enterprises, new businesses leverage their expertise in order to take it to the next level. All of that goes into the second piece that we've been working on. And Vince talked about this a little bit earlier, which had to do with, in this lead up to the strategy being rolled out, we spent a lot of time talking with stakeholders in the ecosystem. And one of the key things that came to the forefront was the challenges with supply chain that were laid bare during the pandemic. So one of the immediate action items was to form a task force to look at manufacturing supply chain for some of our largest life sciences manufacturers here. So we started with Lilly and Elanco and Corteva and Cook and Roche, but we added on several others. And what we're doing is looking at the cross section of where do they have gaps or vulnerabilities in their supply chain? Where is there overlap in those gaps and vulnerabilities? And how then do we target companies outside of Indiana and use our collective muscle to, alongside the IEDC and the purchasing arms of these major manufacturers that we're talking about, to attract and bring those companies closer to their back door, right here in our backyard, and build that supply chain here. And I think many of those efforts will take us to the next level with regard to manufacturing.
All right, and speaking of the next level, Anne, we're gonna talk to you a bit about attracting organizations. When you talk to businesses who are considering Indiana as a new home or to expand if they're already here, what is it about Indiana that they like? And then the flip side of that, what is missing in their eyes that would help us seal more deals?
It's the greatest part of my job, right, is to talk to people that want to think about coming to Indiana. I think the biggest thing that we do is we surprise, right? When you get a company here, so that's the first thing, you gotta get them to come to Indiana, but then once they experience the ecosystem and what we have to offer, it truly allows us to punch above our weight. I mean, the fact that I can call Mike and he can drive down if I have a company that's here, if we can get a hold of the university systems, some of our not-for-profit community, but our ability to collaborate, we have to do that better because speed is the new incentive. So we used to always start with, we have really low tax rates in Indiana, right? I mean, of course, that's why they're here a little bit, and that's a great thing. We have a great business environment, but we don't just lead with, hey, you know, you don't have to pay people very much, we're not gonna tax you very much, and we're gonna work really hard. Like, that brand is kind of over, right? Now it is, we have a secret sauce and you should want to come be part of what we have going on in Indiana. And by the way, we're gonna be selective, right? We are saying no to companies that do not fit our DNA. And I mean, sometimes you get a sense from a company, like, your only goal is to come here and get as much money as you can from the state. We're not interested. Not what, we can't afford it, number one, but number two, it just isn't gonna be part of what is gonna help us multiply and grow. So I think when people come, they see our workforce, I think they see our universities, they see our ability to work and collaborate together as really key things. The things that they feel like we're missing, and we're working really hard at the IEDC to change that, is the humble Hoosier, right? They want to know that the state is gonna help them attract people that are gonna wanna come work here. And that means that we have to improve our brand from people who just, we were an I state. That was, I mean, we didn't have a negative brand, but when you would go out and talk to people, they were like, Indiana, Iowa, like, you know what I mean? They kind of did the I state thing. And now we have spent over $20 million in the last 18 months on really promoting Indiana. Many of you probably have seen our commercials. We're doing very targeted advertising. So those are I think the big kind of pieces.
All right, Mike, we'll wrap it up with you. We've talked about radiopharmaceuticals, nuclear medicine. Explosive, I think, is a fair word to say. Every day I feel like there's a new piece of news coming out of that sector. So we have recently seen, we've already talked about the CDMO sector. Novo is going to acquire Catalent and also Simta on their planned expansion. How can we leverage these and really use them to the full potential?
Yeah, so I think the nuclear medicine working group that my colleague Jane started, I can't take any credit for, and is a great example of what you were just talking about, Ann. This is, you know, multiple folks within the industry coming together to try to work together to solve a problem, roll up their sleeves instead of being competitors, but not only industry, but government, folks within the logistics and some of the supply chain, you know, the airport, just everybody working together to say, what are the biggest challenges to our growth? How can we double this sector? How can we, you know, it's interesting, industry folks saying, how can I bring more competitors here, right? But the more competitors that we have, the more success that we're able to generate, it creates that flywheel concept like Kristen was talking about. That this was a great example of that. And so we can continue to do that, to say, how can we continue to identify areas, go tackle them. It is explosive, but not in a bad way. Sometimes when we talk about nuclear medicine,
Be careful with that word, right?
atom bombs, yeah, exactly, in their mind. This is the most amazing technology, both to be able to see disease cells within the body, but also now to be able to treat them directly with radiotherapy in a way that doesn't doesn't irradiate all the cells and skin all around it, but rather just within a few cells of it. So it's amazing. We talked a little bit about the CDMO. I think, the CDMO expansion that we're seeing is just another great example of, one, the importance to the ecosystem, but two, and to the ecosystem of the life sciences in general, but two, the fact that Indiana is the place to be, that we're going to probably see more and more of these expansions, and how do we continue to work together, much like we've done, across industries, but certainly the nuclear medicine working group. How do we continue to work together to make sure that we are throwing gas on this fire that we currently have going on? So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Mike and Ann, thank you both very much. You're off the hot seat. All right, we're going to move to our next panel. So Jane and Molly and Brad, if you want to start heading this way. So achieving these goals hinges on more than just infrastructure and investment. It requires the cultivation of a strong educational and talent pipeline. The development of skilled professionals is crucial for sustaining and advancing Indiana's life sciences sector, and an intentional focus on education and talent development is key to that. So that's what we're going to dive into now. So Jane Dunnigan-Smith is Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at BioCrossroads. Molly Dodge is Senior Vice President of Workforce and Careers at Ivy Tech. And Brad Rohr, President and CEO at Ascend Indiana. So Jane, we're going to start with you, kind of get the lay of the land. What initiatives or partnerships are being developed to ensure a continuous supply of skilled workers, especially, of course, in life sciences, manufacturing, and R&D?
Thanks for the question. So collaboration is key, absolutely key, and I had some really great partners along the way to do this. But I would say one of the things that we're doing is we're kind of focusing in and starting in a space where we can kind of put a stake in the ground and then expand from there. So we're starting with manufacturing as our first area of focus. So about a year ago, I joined forces with my friends at Ivy Tech, Purdue, Ascend, Lilly, and a few others to start thinking about what this could look like. And we've started to think about a statewide, life sciences-wide manufacturing training ecosystem, where we're thinking about, where's the right place to train the right skills, what are the roles that we need to focus in on first, how do we figure out what those knowledge, skills, and abilities are for those particular roles, and how do we attack those. And so after about a year of Molly and me and a few other people kind of rubbing sticks together with the Tech Hub designation, that kind of poured some fuel on that fire, and we were able to create the BioTrain, essentially that part of the proposal. And so if you think about BioTrain, again, this is statewide, life sciences wide, but our first phase one for that is what is sort of the proposal is primarily focused on, and that would be a facility that would be located here at 16 Tech. And we didn't just look at that as a training facility. We thought about, it's not you build it and they come. You need to think about how do you recruit people into that, how do you train them, and how do you get placed into roles. So we expanded way beyond the 4 or 5 entities that were thinking about it. We've got Employee Indy engaged, Ascend, like I said, and several others, and we're really thinking about how we can focus that collaboration into something that's exciting. So hope we get the Tech Hub proposal, hope we get the grant, but even if we don't, I'll be running around town with shaking a cup, making sure that we get that funded.
Well, I think it's important to point out, this is next level for BioCrossroads, because you've always focused on workforce, but this initiative is really putting the juice behind it, and I noticed it's really neat that you're pushing it even harder than before. All right, Molly, what are some of the biggest training and workforce development challenges that you see? What type of support do our academic institutions, educators, and students need?
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I think I would start by saying thank you to BioCrossroads. What our ecosystem needs is a healthy backbone, and what BioCrossroads is doing in the life sciences sector is really creating, in partnership with partners in the ecosystem, but also creating a North Star for our state to convene around, to understand the demand, to get the right employers at the table, to help academic institutions really map the roles that are needed to the educational opportunities that we provide. So not every role will need a bachelor's degree. And so what are the stackable credentials that Ivy Tech or others can provide to give our students the opportunity to get their foot in the door and in life sciences, and then start a continuous education journey that helps them upskill into future roles within your companies. And so as we think about creating diverse pipelines for all of you, it's really about partnership. It's really about understanding the skills and knowledge and abilities that you're looking for. And it's making sure that our curriculum is aligned so that our students are ready for you on day one with these roles. The other thing I would say is, as educational institutions, we don't necessarily want to be ahead of the employers. So we'd like to come alongside you, but we also like to know where you're going in the future. So Ivy Tech, statewide community college, 19 campuses, we really have the ability to move the needle in terms of workforce. But to that end, we need to understand where the industry is going and what are the future skills you would need. So I'm proud of myself that I may be making sense right now, because Jane and I and our colleagues from Lilly just returned last night from a trip to Ireland to visit the NIBRT facility there and learn what skills and training that they offer that we can bring back here to add into our curriculum. That's what we're looking for. We're also looking for ways in which our campuses can align to employer needs. So we don't offer this program at every single one of our 19 campuses, but we could. And that just means that we need to understand the demand and what you're looking for to help scale the workforce efforts.
Okay, Brad, what are some of the initiatives being driven by Ascend Indiana that could make a difference, and including work that may not be really well known about?
Yeah, thank you. I think first of all, Ascend really is here to support. Right? What we're here to do is help support universities and employers make these connections. We talk about skills gap, we talk about talent alignment, and one of the things that we do fairly well is help guide some of those students into the opportunities that exist in Indiana. Because one of the things we don't do well, as we've said with the humble hat, we don't talk about ourselves well enough as a state. So a lot of our students don't really understand what we have available. Indiana is a fantastic attractor of students for education. Like we're ranked like 9th in the U.S. for attracting students to come get educated. We're roughly like between 35 and 40, somewhere around there, of retaining. So we don't do a very good job of retaining that talent. So one of the things that we do is try to help make those connections. But I think something that people don't really know, that we actually have collaborator agreements with most of the universities and colleges throughout Indiana that gives us a lens into every student that's existing in Indiana, their backgrounds, their majors, their GPAs, when they're anticipated to graduate, everything really kind of summed up in a nice little summary of each one of the students in Indiana. So we can really see, are we developing the talent that you need and others need around the state, and are we doing a good job retaining them? And right now, that answer is no. So how do we help make that alignment happen? So what we're trying to do is make sure that we're fulfilling the needs of industry and supporting other universities and partnerships.
Always interesting to talk about who's doing it right. So Jane, that's your next question. What states or countries are leading the way in terms of developing a workforce to address the needs of the life sciences? Are there people out there, states, countries we can learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. And as Molly pointed out, we just got back from Ireland, and it was a really great learning experience. For those of you who may not know, NIBRT is essentially an organization in Dublin that trains on biomanufacturing, so trains those manufacturing employees. It was formed about, I think, 13 years ago by the Irish government because they basically saw, because of their tax incentives, they had a lot of pharmaceutical companies there, and they started to notice that Amgen was flying their employees there from California. And they were like, well, this is obviously a really big thing that we need to have, and they're working to create some global partners. So that's one thing that we're looking at, is perhaps doing something along those lines. They also have partnered with an organization in Canada where there are different facilities throughout Canada to do the same kind of training. Theirs are sort of mimicking each other to cover the vast geographic expanse that they have there. The other one that we've looked at is BTech in North Carolina. So BTech is also a biomanufacturing training facility. It's not affiliated with NYBERD, it's affiliated with NC State, but it was formed again by the North Carolina government. It's largely funded through them and through the tobacco settlement. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to think about. These are choices that these governments have made, these government agencies have made to help with economic development by making sure that they have that pipeline in place. So we're looking at doing something along those same lines because, again, if the talent's there, that's a huge piece in attracting companies and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Fascinating. Molly, what steps are being taken, or what steps do you think have to be taken to adapt curriculums and training programs to meet the needs of the life sciences industry?
So I think I've hit on the need for employers, but that can't be said enough, that we need you. We need you at the table. We would love for you to take our faculty as externs for a period of time to help them understand how your industry is changing and the skills that need to be taught. We'd love to have you on our advisory boards to help us evaluate our curriculum and ensure our students are learning relevant skills. I also think, though, that we need to be, and our new strategic plan, the title is Higher Education at the Speed of Life. And so we as higher education professionals need to continually look at our curriculum and dissect it a bit. Individuals may not want to come to us for a 2 or 4 year degree right off the bat. And so how can we create stepping stones that start with boot camps or non-credit training that would crosswalk to credit as a student grows in their career? But how can we provide valuable skills in an accelerated time frame to really qualify students for in-demand roles that pay above Indiana's median wage? And then finally, and I mentioned this earlier, and Jane also mentioned the power of partnerships. As we develop these diverse talent pipelines in a state with low unemployment, we have to have partnerships with community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, who can serve as sort of that trusted referral to students who maybe don't know about the life sciences or need help gaining access to training at Ivy Tech. This is an exciting sector, but there's a lot of folks who out there, adults, young adults, who don't see themselves in manufacturing, and the life sciences seems like a black box. So how do we rely on employers to come alongside of us and tell their stories and actually create return on investment for these students in the form of an interview or an entry-level job?
Brad, you talked about our excellent universities and how Indiana has such a reputation in having such good universities, but we're not retaining the graduates. So how do you get them to stay so that we can realize our full potential here in Indiana?
Yeah, I think it goes into a few things. You obviously got to be on campus, right? You got to exist, and you got to have a presence on campus, but you have to be able to offer internship experience, employment opportunities. But it's not just, come do the job and then leave. You have to realize that we have to incorporate them in our community. It has to be an experience. It's not just as an intern and hopefully they learn a lot and then moved on. It's really about acclimating into the community itself, creating opportunities for them to socialize in that community. I mean, the IEDC and the state has invested $500 million in the first rated grant and another $500 million in the next rated grant for improvement in our community and our place of living. So how do we make sure that these students see that and look at Indiana as like, well, I can see myself here. I don't have to go to Chicago or New York or Seattle to be successful. The opportunity for employment is here and the community is here as well.
Well, Jane, Molly, Brad, thank you very much for sharing your perspective on workforce. We're going to move on to our next topic now. With Vince coming to the stage again, and also back up, and Amanda Decker. So in this era of rapid innovation and complex challenges, effective communication becomes the foundation of collaboration. We've talked quite a bit about making Indiana's message a lot stronger. So the goal of supporting connections and outreach will help ensure that Indiana's life sciences sector is not only heard, but also involved, understood, and supported at every level. Vince, you've already been on the stage, and you've already been on the stage, so we're gonna introduce Amanda. She is the new Director of Communications at BioCrossroads. But Vince, let's start with you. From your perspective, what can everyone who's here today, what can we do to elevate Indiana's profile? What are the strategies that we should use?
Little audience participation, so you're taking a nap, wake up now. Who has a LinkedIn profile? So I think about 95% of us do. We are all have the ability to be influencers and influence your networks by sharing stories about all of the awesome things that are happening here in our backyard. Follow BioCrossroads. We'll feed you content that you can repost and share with your networks and help evangelize and share just the awesome developments happening. And that is being covered by IBJ, being covered by Inside Indiana Business, being covered by national publications as well, and be part of the masses to really expand and ripple out into the national and international networks that you all have through your personal digital Rolodexes through LinkedIn, and help tell our story. So we'll supply the content. You've got to supply and support the dissemination of that, and really would ask for your support and help in doing that.
Do you want to highlight anything at all that BioCrossroads does to promote that effective communication, or any strategies that you use? Or he's looking at Amanda. I think he wants you to take that one.
My boss is looking at it.
Right.
So over the past few months, and Vince and I both relatively new in our positions in BioCrossroads, but we've really been able to take this time to kind of analyze where is our audience coming from, and not just industry, but physical location. Who's looking at our LinkedIn page? Who's engaging with our content? And then what type of content that they're engaging with. And that's really helped us kind of, in the last few months, grow our LinkedIn audience, but grow quality of audience, which is really important in social media, and making sure that you don't just have 10,000 followers, but of those followers, those people are engaging with the content that you're sharing. And as Vince mentioned, sharing those amongst your networks, and that's how we quickly get our message out, and we streamline the content that we're sharing.
All right, talk just a bit, it's a good segue. Where is BioCrossroads focusing its efforts to enhance collaboration among life sciences companies, academic institutions, and economic development corporations?
So right now, our big focus, and it's been very exciting for us internally, and will be externally as well, we're going to roll out a new website in the next few months. And in the marketing world, when you have stories to tell and have information to share, having a good platform by which to do that is incredibly exciting. And then that will kind of streamline across our social media channels, our LinkedIn, our messaging, the emails you guys receive, as well as signing up for our monthly newsletter, which you can do that if you are not receiving that right now. And it's a really simple, kind of quick. We share headlines from IIB, IBJ around the state happening in life sciences, and some updates about what's going on at BioCrossroads as well.
All right, very good. Looking forward to the new website. Okay, and from the perspective of the IEDC, how critical is effective communication in attracting and retaining life sciences investments in the state?
I think it's critical in any industry, but definitely in life sciences. You guys have got such a great story to tell. Just listening to Mike talk about the depth and breadth. So I think that effective communication is really there. I'd encourage you to also follow the IEDC channels on all of your social media. We also will be feeding you content, right? Whether it is about the READY program, where we are investing $1 billion from the state in quality of place and really enrichment of our workforce. But more importantly, we found that due to the match dollars that are required through READY, that we think that program will actually put over $20 billion in quality of place and quality of life within the state. We know of no other state in the country that is doing that kind of work. I will tell you, employers are very interested in it. We have started including within about a 75-mile radius, within investment packages that we're offering to companies, the types of things that are happening with Ready, so they will know what it is like to be able to recruit and retain people. We give them the snapshot of the whole program, but we actually go deeper on types of projects. And even though those are not dollars directly to them, they are considering them and counting them. We'll also tell you that we spent, I was in DC a couple of weeks ago, talking to the CHIPS office and IRA, and we were with Commerce, and we were a lot of places, very busy. But when we told the Ready story from the federal perspective, they are really saying that a lot of companies are missing out on telling the story that what we're doing with Ready when they're applying for grants, because we are putting 40% of Ready is, at least phase one, went to affordable housing. Really big, and very important to the feds. A certain percentage was for daycare. Like, so we have things that will help you tick a box in one of your grants that you don't even know about. We've already spent the money. And I mean, when we sat down and talked to several of these offices, they're like, you need a fact sheet. You need to make sure your companies are putting that in. So I know all of you apply for grants. Definitely, we're looking at semiconductors and EV batteries, and we are trying to take what the state investments are and again multiply it many times so that that dollar can be counted.
All right, Amanda, let's move back to you. Cross-sector collaboration is vital for the growth of life sciences. So what challenges have you encountered in trying to get all of these sectors to talk to each other? And how have you addressed those challenges?
So we've heard from several people this afternoon, the life sciences industry is huge and it covers a vast array of different industries and specific job functions. So it's really getting everyone on the same page about how we're talking about the industry. And it's kind of the branding idea in marketing, that when you see a brand that you recognize, that you just know that's Indiana Life Sciences. Whether it's the color scheme and the language they're using, but making sure that when you are streamlined with that, and that our industries and our partners and philanthropic partners, our board of directors, everyone is kind of speaking about things in the same way, then it looks and feels a lot more cohesive. You trust it, it feels better, and we feel better about it because we're all on the same page. We have the people, we have the stories to tell, we have the industry here, we have the advancements happening. We just need to provide that simple platform, that hub of information for Indiana Life Sciences, which is really what BioCrossroads seeks to accomplish.
All right, Ann, let's go back to you. How does the IDC position Indiana's collaborative environment to create differentiation? And does that resonate with out-of-state companies?
It 100% does, and I think we think about, as I talked about with Ready, that was, that is 15 regions had to come together to be able to go after those kinds of dollars. So that really talks about collaboration. I would say a lot of what we do with Ivy Tech and our university system, a great example of that is they have such a steep history in what they have done with the 5 auto OEMs that we have in the state, that when we were going after Samsung, SDI, and Stellantis, which is Star Plus and Kokomo, for the EV battery plant, in that particular industry, we were able to show a deep history of that collaboration to really differentiate Indiana, and we've already done it. So if we've done it in one industry, it can be replicated. I know all of you know this, but Ivy Tech is our secret weapon. The fact that it is the largest community college network in the country, I have to very often repeat myself to Fortune 500 CEOs when they say, but how many schools are we going to have to go to? And I said one. In that sector, it is one. And they can pick up a program and they can move it around to your area. It is a really big differentiator for us. I just also would say the collaboration with companies, it's been said before, a lot of times I'm asked, what's the government doing for you? I spent a lot of time on that side of the aisle, not in government, and I can tell you the biggest thing is businesses is create opportunities. You guys are all really busy, but if you can create the apprenticeship opportunities, not just for kids, but for adults that maybe didn't launch You know, we all know the person who's in their 30s, that man, they just didn't launch the right way in their 20s. If you can create that opportunity for somebody, with 30 more years of productivity with those folks, they become a little bit lost. And so for me, I always like when I get a chance to talk to a lot of business owners is, you know, ask you, make time to do that. And it's not just the kid coming out of school or out of high school, but somebody who's looking to shift midway in their career.
I would like to bring up one thing about that. I recently did a story on Lilly, and I know other companies are doing it. It's not just Lilly, however, they're not coming to my mind right now, but their Skills First program, where they're now hiring, they have a special program where you don't have to have a 4-year degree. It's a Skills First focus. Do you want to touch on that at all? It seems like it's becoming, it's kind of a snowball effect, starting, Lilly probably wasn't the first, but.
So I would also tell you that when I look across industry, most of the jobs that are created, especially with a manufacturing base, about 20% of them need a 4-year degree or higher, and 80% of them need some sort of a technician degree. So the work that is being done in that area is, we have some great examples of some companies that are putting virtual reality glasses on kids in 5th and 6th grade and showing them that manufacturing isn't dirty, that actually a lot of the manufacturing that happens in life sciences or semiconductors is clean room manufacturing, right? A lot of people think it's gonna be physically tiring. Well, in many of those cases, again, machines are doing the work, they're just making sure the machines are doing what is needed. And so it is a highly technical skill, it's one that is exciting. You can make good money, you can make a living. And so, you know, we work a lot with Katie Jenner at the Department of Education. She's going down all the way into our elementary schools and designating them as STEM or life sciences or other areas to get kids excited. And, you know, kind of on a personal level for me, if a kid knows where they're going in 5th or 6th grade, they are less likely to do drugs or have suicidal tendencies or many of the other things that derail young people today, have high anxiety and mental health issues. So to me, that's kind of incumbent that if we can get to kids at that age and show them the opportunities, yes, a 4-year degree is great, but man, maybe you find out in the 6th grade that you really want to go work in manufacturing in biopharma or in, I mean, who wouldn't want to say that you were part of nuclear medicine, right? That's kind of cool.
Very good. All right, we've talked a lot about not being humble, so Amanda, I'm gonna give you a chance to toot BioCrossroads horn. Talk just a little bit about some upcoming campaigns at BioCrossroads and how these will help elevate Indiana's profile on a bigger stage.
So as we mentioned with the new website, that will be one of them, and kind of not a rebranding, but just kind of refreshed brand look. That also came with an updated newsletter. So if you were getting a newsletter last year and then maybe haven't received it this year, it looks a little bit different. We've changed up how we're communicating with our board of directors as well. But kind of overall, building out for the rest of the year, really a deep content strategy that will include thought leadership. It will include blog pieces that we put together. It will include these types of events, speaking engagements that we'll be participating in, really just trying to keep ourselves out there, to keep sharing your stories, and to keep being able to highlight things and be a mouthpiece for everything going on in life sciences.
Yeah, I would maybe build on that. I would invite, there's so many good stories here in this room that need to be told. Let us help you tell that. Raise your hand, reach out to Amanda and I, and we'd love to tell your story. Shine a spotlight on your organization, what you're doing, the awesome efforts that you and your teams are doing, and our job is to help lift you all up and elevate the great work that you're doing, and we're here to support that effort. So please do reach out and take advantage of that. And then we're also trying to build community. So thank you all for coming, and that's what we're doing. We're community building. We've got 4 more of these events. The next one is going to be in April. We're actually going to take the show on the road up to Fishers and shine a light on the great activity happening in Fishers. INCOG is so gracious to host us there, and we're going to have an opportunity to see and hear about all the great work that TLX is doing up there, and Genezen, INCOG, Stellantis, and then the other tech hubs, whether Bloomington, Lafayette, South Bend, et cetera, Warsaw. So join us in the 4 other FrameWORX events, and then we also have an annual life science event as well in August, end of August. Right? And we're focusing on the topic of metabolic disorders. And last year we had a really successful summit around Alzheimer's. This year we'll be shining a light on all the amazing work being done in the metabolic space here in Indiana. So a little plug on additional events that we hope you join and bring a friend or 2.
All right, well, we finished with just 2 minutes left. So if any of you have any final thoughts you want to share, now's your chance, or we can go ahead and open it up to the audience Q&A.
Are any questions through the app?
Oh, we are doing this. I've never done this before. This is
Go high tech here.
because people never want to raise their hand or go to the mic. So there are QR codes on your table, or if you're in chairs, maybe have someone pass you a little postcard. It's got a QR code on it. So you scan the QR code with your phone, and then that is going to send your it'll open an app, and you just type in your question and you send it to me, and then we will pick through the questions. And you don't even have to talk.
Or
out
raise your
loud.
hand.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. So, I just have to start wearing readers. These are just small enough. Pause. I have to go get my readers. They're like 10 feet away.
Hey Vince, I got one.
Go over, Dan.
So we had, Vince and Mike and I had the great pleasure of being up in Warsaw on Monday. And for those of you who don't necessarily follow all what's going on up in Warsaw related to the orthopedics capital of the world, it is remarkable. I'm done. I want you to give this audience a highlight of our visit up there.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. So, repeat the question. Dan, Mike and I had the pleasure of being the guest of our sister organization up there called FrameWORX. I'd never been to Warsaw, Indiana, and I was blown away. You drive about a 2-mile radius, and there's at least 25 orthopedic companies. Everything from multi-billion dollars in Environment, all the way to 3 folks in a garage. And it's just a super cool ecosystem. 50% of the world's orthopedics come out of Warsaw, Indiana. $20 billion of annual revenue comes out of Warsaw in orthopedics. About 20,000 employees in that city are involved in orthopedics. It is really, really an amazing community and a real gem of the life science community here. And we got to see how titanium comes in to the factory with a titanium block, goes out the door as a knee or a hip into your grandfather, your grandmother, your father's knee or hip. Super cool, really inspiring. And with Zimmer Biomet now really doubling down on their commitment to Warsaw, there's incredible momentum. They've got a $30 million grant from the state to improve their sense of place. They're building multifamily housing to attract talent and retain talent. They're investing in parks and trails. We know the next generation wants those amenities and to be able to attract the workforce that's necessary to fuel the growth. Pickleball is fueling growth in orthopedics. No, I mean, I love pickleball, and it is literally being a game changer for them in driving demand. And so it's the prospects, the CAGR that they're projecting for the next 10 years, 5 to 8% CAGR for the next 10 years. It's super exciting.
All right, I neglected to call up our other panelists for this discussion, so we still need Kristen and Mike. Chris and I, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Mike? Oh,
Yeah.
Sharon, I'm sorry, yes.
You might have one up.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
Okay, so here's my question.
All right, Kristen.
What is BioCrossroads doing to help startups raise capital, and will BioCrossroads be an investor in the future?
So, for history, since 2004, I believe, BioCrossroads has helped stand up 6 different funds in the past. And we've had the pleasure of investing in Covina in the past and on the cap table. We are right now in the feasibility stages of examining the viability of raising another life science fund. So stay tuned on that. We think there's a real need, and we're hearing there's a real need in the community for early stage capital that we believe BioCrossroads might be well positioned to try to serve that need. So that's part of our work, and stay tuned for further developments.
So, Kristen, one question that came in for you is, what do you need more of? Capital, but I think
Capital,
we
capital,
get the
and
vibe.
more capital.
Right. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
Well, I think it's not just the capital, but it's the events and activities and things that drive the capital. So when you look outside of Indiana, you look to Boston, Chicago, the coast, there are so many meet and greet opportunities, whether it's a Portal Innovations Hub that offers all of these sessions where you can meet with potential investors. They bring money to the table as well. But there's also things like Cooley, a law firm, will do a capital call where they bring companies in to pitch, and there's investors in the audience. A lot of big pharma does a lot of pitch competitions and things that allow you the opportunity to showcase your work. But these are in person, these are meet and greet, these are networking events. We just don't have that same opportunity here, and so we just need to be continuously creative and try to find ways to get together. I mean, obviously Valley was a great start. We need to get more life science presence there, but it is all about those collisions, those meet and greet opportunities. We can finagle tickets, but the cost of flying to Boston, I don't know about you all, it's not in my budget all the time. So we need to bring those events here whenever possible.
Yeah, no doubt. I think to your earlier point, there's a flywheel effect, a network effect that can be built, and I think if we pull together the various relationships, it's all about relationships and credibility that comes with those relationships. Pull those relationships together and build a critical mass of those relationships and trust and deal flow. I think we can get folks to come and have an Indiana Life Science Investor Day here, and I think there should be a joint collaborative objective we have over the next several months.
A lot of startups that would appreciate that.
Sharon, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I think also to build is, don't forget about the locals. So IEDC, the innovation vouchers, is a great thing. We've been able to work and collaborate with a lot of people. I think there's opportunities to be creative with that. Last year, we actually launched our Quantum Leap Award, which Roche sponsored, and Katie's somewhere here. Murex actually won that. She's in the back there. So, giving people space where they can call home is really important, and being able to have people support that through rent and a cash prize to answer a scientific question is what you need to then go and pitch.
All right, Kate from Roche. You have a Skills First program at Roche also, right? No. Sorry about it. I've only half written that article, and it just I'm 50% done. Go ahead.
Charlie from IU Medicine and IU Health. So we know that
Give you a mic, Charlie.
Thank you. We know IU has new vice president and president, and then they talking about biotech corridor, and they even thinking about several hundred million for the biotech. So, but I already see IU, in clinical with expert, not expert. We like to have clinical trial, but we don't have local trial. And you're talking biotech run so high, but in reality, is that money from big farm or from small startup? I have 2 startups, so they have a hard time to raise capital. So my question is, how you collaborate with IU this effort? I was talking to vice president as well, said how you work with the lot of biotech industry in Indiana, how to work together with the same corridors.
Should probably have Alan speak to this, and Sharon can speak to this as well. They do a great job of collaborating with the universities. And yes, I think there's a new leadership at IU that we're beginning to engage with. I met with Dean Hess a couple weeks ago as an introductory meeting. He's on our board and eager to collaborate at the School of Medicine. And then, Rush Mumper is new in his role as head of research at IU. And he's building a nice team that's really leaning forward in how to commercialize assets that sit within the IU portfolio. And then, with Mung's leadership at Purdue, also, helps that a university professor has been a founder in the past. That's a pretty unique profile for a university professor. So I think we've got a lot of the DNA and the makings of a great collaboration that's ongoing, but also could be expanded further. And I'm optimistic about how that might play. Sharon, I don't know if you want to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is to make sure everybody knows what their strengths are and don't duplicate. I mean, this is what happens over and over again where there's duplication of efforts. So I think it's really important that as a community, we know what we're each good at, and we work together to just play to our strengths and not try and reinvent the wheel. So when it comes to drug discovery, if you need access to make modalities, right? IBRI has great facilities for that. You don't need to build that lab, which is very expensive. So trying to make sure that as these new initiatives are being announced, that we don't duplicate efforts, I think that's really important.
Question way in the back.
Yes, I mean, what you're saying is really true, but the cost of renting space, for example, here, is to do a 600 square foot laboratory space, consume over 25% of the current phase 1 SBIR awards, grant awards. And so that's a pretty tall measure, and it's very difficult to get that money when you are applying for a grant. Put 25% into rent into your budget.
Yeah, that's exactly why I mentioned like our Quantum Leap award program, and I've been working really hard for trying to get sponsors for that, even outside of the state of Indiana, right, to showcase the things that are there, because it's not just, the rent. If you have that covered and then you have access to equipment that you don't have to use for your own capital, that is really important. That's money that you don't have to have on your books. So being able to have a space like this, I mean, we work very hard to be very flexible to our members' needs.
And I'll tell you, Covina lives in the world of grants, and we have done those sponsored research agreements through IU and also work with the IBRI. It is far less expensive to do work through the IBRI, but it depends on what you need, obviously, and where's the best place to do the work. But I think one thing as startups we're all really good at is being very creative and stretching our dollars and working in these virtual hybrid models to try to figure out how do we get our science moving as quickly as possible for the lowest possible cost. I always say it's not for the faint of heart, and you have to be very creative. But we're fortunate that we do have some options, whether that's sponsored research agreements or now the IBRI. 10 years ago we didn't have the IBRI. How many years? We didn't have the IBRI, and we had to go out and build our own labs, and that was a pretty good one.
Well, the Elevate Ventures Fund for our particular company enabled us to rent half of the chemistry space here.
Yeah, I mean, Elevate's.
We would not be able to do it if it wasn't for the Elevate Ventures matching SBIR fund.
Which is great. It sounds like they're putting together all the different pieces, the Elevate, the SBIR funding to be able to move it forward.
Emily, you have a question?
I just want to echo the importance of the shared resources and the importance of the philanthropic and public investment that goes into aggregating those to help extend the runway for our life sciences startups as well as our other capital-intensive industries. So by comparison, I do believe that same lab bench in Boston or Cambridge would cost 10x what it does at the IBRI. So we also have to recognize that as part of the competitive advantage that we have in Indianapolis, and as R&D has become more distributed overall, it creates opportunities for us because the science goes farther here. And a related example, also in 16 Tech, we have a makerspace with shared equipment. We do have some med tech and health tech companies that are using that for prototyping. The example I want to share though is a company that's engaged in ag tech, And last year closed their first round, bought a membership to our makerspace, and estimates that their R&D costs are 1/10 what they would have been had they had to go out and buy all the equipment that they need on their own to prototype their product. So that's exactly, the type of benefit that's aggregating through the shared resources like at the IBRI and here at 16 Tech. We want to do what we can to make it more cost competitive for those of you who are here in the ecosystem by stacking some of these opportunities on top of one another. But there's a lot that's happening right now that really does create competitive advantage for our startups.
I'm just scrolling through the questions. Another hot topic seems to be talent, which of course we talked about as one of the pillars. It says Indiana is conservative and recruiting talent is hard. How can all of you make the state open to diversify to get better talent? And there's actually a few questions about having a more diverse workforce. So what would any of you like to say on that topic?
I'd actually like to, brag about IBRI. If you look at our website and our employees, look at the diversity there. It is something that really attracted me to come here, and frankly, I was at Lilly for 23 years, and I will tell you, I did not see that diversity there. So I think if you have the right environment and the right leadership, that diversity will naturally come to you. You don't necessarily have to create programs. If you allow people to be themselves and be in a safe environment where they can be themselves, you'll get it naturally.
All right, is there, and we actually are at the minute mark, but is there any other questions that you want to take from the audience or any other general thoughts that you want to share?
Sorry, another thing we're talking about SBIR. Across the country, every state, if you get SBIR phase 2, give some thousand. I think here we don't have anything. If you get SBIR phase 1, you get 50K, I think. But SBIR phase 2, I don't know.
You're talking about SBIR matching funds?
Yes, the matching funds.
There are matching funds,
Yeah,
I'm just
so
trying to
you got
remember
phase
the
one.
organization, but.
They're 50K, so 2 states give half a million. Another thing is that Indiana, Texas, they crazy. I get a lot of email from this. If you make company, they give 5 million. And so, why do not state have this kind of far to identify company? But I know that's too much because they try to build up the cancer center things and in collaboration with the MD Andersons. So if your PI go there, they give 9 million plus 5 million relocation your company. If you have a state clinical trial, it's very accountable. It's not easy to get 5 million here for the angel fund. So I don't know how states have this kind of funding support.
Some of it depends on how they are funded. I will tell you, our state, Ohio, just to the east of us, is funded by the alcohol tax. Their budget is 600 times what we have at the IEDC. Right? So anybody who drinks up, they're funding economic development in Ohio. So I think there's some of that. I tell you also, if you wanted to spend the time, you should look at some of those programs. There's a lot that comes with those. There's a lot of clawbacks. There's a lot of requirements. I don't know of very many states, Texas included, that just write you a check, right? Without some significant performance metrics. And that is because they also have to answer to their citizenry, right? And so if you're just writing checks and then you don't necessarily have the performance on the back end, trust me, we just got done with session. I hear a lot about transparency in the IDC, right? Those are difficult things. So I think sometimes the headline of the program is not always what I would say the program is.
Well, I can tell you from the list of questions coming in on the app that there are a lot more people with a lot more questions. So we're going to promote the networking session that's coming up. Hopefully you can find the right person to ask your question to, because we didn't even come close to getting to about 5% of them. So if you have any closing thoughts, Vince?
No, well, thanks for one, coming, and two, your engagement. We will review all these questions, and to the extent we can identify who asked it, we will try to get back to you with some substantive responses, and then just keep the engagement, right? It doesn't stop at 6 o'clock when we shut the bar down. Continue, emails, BWONG@BioCrossroads.com. Feel free to reach out. Love to connect and learn more about what you're trying to do and how we can support you. So thanks again. Thanks for all the panelists. And let's go build this thing bigger and better. Right, Kristen?
Bigger.
All right. And then, last of all, thank you to Kylie for moderating. Good job.
There's a beautiful patio right outside of that glass wall. You can't, just be careful which door you go out. I think some of them alarm, but it is beautiful outside, so you can spill out into the beautiful patio and talk to folks if you like.
They are all